For the next section of character rigging, we will be creating some attributes and some set driven keys for the hand. Now you might have noticed that my multi-rigs are a little bit more updated. Don't worry about these spheres, they're not really part of this lesson, they're not important whatsoever. We'll talk about those in the next lesson. But at the moment, let's just quickly look at my hand here. You might have noticed that this wrist, has some extra attributes like index curl, finger spread, etc. And if I just increase or decrease the finger curl, you can see that I've created attributes which allow me to pretty much open and close the hand, or to, for example, spread the fingers out or bring them closer together. Now, how did I do that? Well, this was created by adding in new attributes to the wrist and also creating set driven keys. Now, what are set driven keys? Well, a simple explanation for set driven keys is when you keyframe something in the time slider here at the bottom, you're keying attributes like move, scale, and rotation to time. Whereas set driven keys, it doesn't involve time whatsoever, it involves another object. So we'll quickly give you an example of that here. I have a quick little joint set up here with a NURB circle. What we want to do is you want to go from rigging to animation. And if you go to key, and there's set driven keys and set. So you have these two options here. You have the driver and the driven. So the driver is basically the controller. So for instance, right now, this is going to control the rotation of this joint here. So I'm going to load that as the driver. And the driven is going to be this here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to animate this going up and down. So I'm going to load that. So you see that it'll load in that specific joint or that specific object. So what we need to do now is, you can see at the side here we have all the different attributes, the translate, scale, rotation, etc. Now what we're going to do is we're going to set up a driven key, so when I move this up and down in the y-axis, it will cause this to rotate in the z-axis. And how to do that is very simple. On the driven aspect, you go to translate y or translate z, whatever you want to translate it to. And in the driven option, make sure that you have, for example, rotate Z. So when translate Z is at 0, I'm going to key it so it's going to stay like that. Now if I move this up to about 156 there, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to rotate this by about 150 as well, about 150 there, and key. Now, just watch when I move it down. You can see that I'm actually able to control the rotation of that joint, because again, because we're using set driven keys, so when I move this up, it's going to increase or decrease the rotation axes. And I can even add more to it as well. So for instance, if I put it down here, I can select that, move that forward to about here, and key it again. So now I have a controller set up where I can move this all the way up and down. It's kind of messed up a little bit there, but you get the point, you get the idea of how it's meant to work. And it's basically the same. So it's basically the same when it comes to the fingers. We're just using set driven keys. But how do you actually create the attributes, these extra attributes? And again, that is quite simple as well. We'll go into the example more over here. Make sure that it's like the wrist. At the moment, it's got its default attributes: scale, rotation, translate. What we want to do is, if you go to, again, make sure that the wrist is selected. Go to create. Sorry, not create. Where is it now? Ah, there we are. Sorry, you want to go to modify and add attribute. And you get this new window that pops up here, and you can give it a name. So for instance, what we'll do is we'll start off with, say, the index curl. I want to make sure it's keyable, that way you can actually put some animation to it. Keep it as a float, and what we can do here is we can set a numerical value. So we can set the minimum amount of rotation or translation, etc. We want to keep it to 0, or maybe -10 is the minimum, and what the maximum is. So for instance, on this, we're just going to put the minimum to 0, and the maximum it can go up to is 10. And then what you do is if you press OK, it closes the window, and you can see right now is that we do have the index curl as an attribute. So what we can do next is we can add some more. So if we want to modify, add attribute, we can put in, say, a mid curl, if I can spell curl right. And again, we can put that to 0 and 10. And if you press add, it keeps the window open, and you can see I also had added the new attribute there. And then what we can do is we can keep adding it, so we can have ring curl, and again have that to 0 and 10. Add that pinky curl 0 10. Add. And for the last one I'm going to quickly do is the finger spread, and the minimum on this is going to be -10, maximum being 10. The reason why I put minus is because again with the finger spread you can have the fingers come inwards or outwards. So the minimum would be inwards at -10, and maximum would be spreading the fingers out. And press OK. So now we have an attribute set up. So if I go to index 10, at the moment nothing's really happening. What we need to do now is we need to add set driven keys. So again, we go back to key and set driven key and set. And what we'll do is we'll have the driver as the wrist. You can see it has a really big name, but if you scroll all the way to the right, you can see that the driver is in fact wrist L. And we'll start off with the index, which will be index 1, and then we'll load that as driven. So right now we're going to be working with the index curl. So we'll select on index curl, and we want the rotate Z, I believe. Let's quickly check. Yep, it's the Z one. So at the moment the index curl is set to 0. Again, make sure that before you key, you double check the number. So at the moment it's at 0. And we have index 1 Z, and that's all set at 0. What we'll do is we'll press key. So we're saying that 0 is going to be pretty much standard flat. And what we can do as well is we can do the same for the other ones. We'll do that in a minute. So now that we've set a driven key for 0, let's change this to 10. And again, we're still in that. And what we'll do is we'll rotate this. You'll know that it's set driven because again you'll see that it's got a little blue box there. So what we'll do is we'll set this to 80. Oops, not 80, -80, sorry. And then what we'll do is we'll key it. Now if I go back to the wrist, and if I change the index curl, you'll see now that now that we've got a bit of a curl going on. So when it's at 0, it'll stay stationary. When we increase the curl to about 3 or 4, you'll see that it'll slowly go through. It'll go through the motion until it gets to the designated point. The what we need to do next is, so we've done index 1. Now we need to do the second index finger. So what we do then is we have to just load driven, and you can see that it's index 2. Rotate by Z. It's got a double check. Yep, index is at 0. Just key it. Then change this to 10. Go back to index 2. And then what we'll do is we'll curl that in by -60. And then key. So now we have the index curl set up. And it's basically the exact same for the rest of now. So if you go to the middle finger, make sure that you have mid curl selected. Go to middle 1, load as driven, translate to Z, and again it'll be a little bit tedious, doing back and forth. Just double check. Yep, mid curl is at 0. Go back to mid 1, key it, and to be more efficient, what I'll do is I'll select the middle 2, load that as driven, add that as rotate Z and key. Then mid curl, change that to 10. Then what I'll do is I will select middle 1 again, load that as driven, minus 80, key, go to middle 2, load that as driven, rotate by Z, and again I'll put that as minus 60 again, and then key. So now we have the index set up and the mid curl set up, and you'll do the exact same for the rest of them as well. I'm not going to go through the ring finger and the pinky finger because it's exactly the same process. But what we'll do is I will show you the process for the finger spread. So let me just set everything back to 0. And this will only just require the ones, the base joints. So we got finger spread selected. I'll load this as driven, so we have index 1 selected, yep. And this time it's going to be at the rotate Y rather than rotate Z. So we go to rotate Y and it's at 0, so we'll just key it. Do the same for these ones, load driven, rotate Y, key, load driven, load driven, rotate Y, key. Then next what we'll do is we'll change finger spread to 10. Then go back to loading in index 1 as the driver, rotate Y, and we'll move this to about 11. Oops, minus 11. Just to get that a little bit out. Key. And the middle finger, again, a lot of times when you're doing this, make sure to have a bit of reference. Or just, again, you might want to just hold your hand out and spread it out. What I notice is that the middle finger doesn't really move that much, so I might just skip the middle finger entirely and just go straight to the ring finger. Rotate Y. And again, it's spreading out, so this will go to about 11. Key. Go to the ring finger, load driven, rotate. And again, put that to about 11 as well. Key. Actually, I might put a little bit of a spread on that, just about 2. I think 2 is probably fine. Key. So now if I go back to my finger spread, you'll see that it opens and closes. But again, there's nothing on the minus at the moment, so make sure this is set to minus 10. And what we'll do next is load index 1 as driven, rotate Y, and this time you want to bring it inwards. So about, I'm going to say 7. Again, it's up to your own determination as to what numerical value you want to put in. Then press key. Then load driven for the ring, rotate Y, bring that forward. Yeah, minus 7 is about right. Key. Then the pinky, rotate Y. And this one, minus 10 should do the trick. Key. So now you see that we can open and close our fingers. And that's how you set up some attributes for your hand. You can add in some more, so if I go to my finished version, you'll see that I have a thumb bend and a thumb up and down, which is basically like a thumb spread essentially. You may want to add in some more joints in the fingers as well. So for instance, on the hand that I was just working on right now, it had 3 joints. I did update this to have 4 joints. So here you might have to do a little bit more extra work, because again, the more joints you have, the more control that you have. So you can see that I can have a much more natural sort of curvature because I have 4 joints. The one that I was working on, which is a quick example just to kind of speed up the process a little bit. But the one that you should have at least 4 joints. Again, 1 at the bottom, 2 in the middle, and then 1 at the top to kind of have a much more better articulation on the hand. So that's how you set up set driven keys and also create attributes for the hand. And in the next video, what we'll do is we'll create a controller node and have some forward kinematic controls for the arms.